Well, welcome everybody to the inaugural 2016 Community Conversation Series. You braved the weather, so thank you for that. Our expert today is Tim Dunn from the VNA Alliance, and he was already telling us this year, so I'm just going to hand him the mic and have him keep going. So Tim, welcome. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. It's good to be here. We were just sharing a little bit about my background. I've been a physical therapist for 22 years, accumulating some knowledge hopefully we can pass along today as we're talking about exercise, and more specifically, I'm hoping to go over some of the motivators, perhaps some of the barriers even in establishing an effective exercise prescription. One thing I want to talk about with exercise is we want to dose it appropriately, get the desired effects. Just like a physician, if they were to order a medication, they wouldn't simply give you a bottle with medicine. Here you go ahead and take it. It would be probably concerning to you, I would hope, if that was the case. You would want to know, when should I take it? How much should I take? How often? What is the effects? What should I anticipate from taking this medication? So we want to have that type of mindset when we're establishing an exercise prescription when it comes to our patients, ourselves, and establishing in order to get the max value. Because at one dose, something could be very valuable, efficacious. Another dose could be toxic or unproductive. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So putting the fun in fitness. Now, when we talk about some of the barriers, we need to have some motivation. We need some motivation in order to establish an exercise program. And here's a funny slide here, right? Some motivation required. We don't have a giant T-Rex charging at us. That would probably get us in motion if we had that type of motivator behind us. But we all need to find what that motivation is. What is it that's going to take us from contemplating the possibility of engaging in exercise and then not only just initiating, but sustaining it and maintaining that level throughout our lives in order to maximize our health. So we have to find what that some motivation would be for ourselves. So today, let's talk about some of those barriers. Certainly the benefits of exercise. I shared in the advertisement for this course. If exercise came in a pill, everyone would be on it. I mean, it really has a tremendous amount of value for ourselves. So we need to make sure we're understanding not only the values and the beliefs of exercise. What does it take, again, to make it valuable and lasting? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we'll start with some of the barriers. Now, I have the three of you. What have you experienced, whether it's personally or individuals you've worked with, in terms of keeping one from exercising? What are those barriers that you've noticed?
Fatigue.
Being too tired to exercise, right. I'm too weak. All right.
Don't have time.
Yeah, a very good point. I don't have time. Absolutely.
Or I don't make time.
Right. There was one study, they were looking at a group of patients with Parkinson's disease. Now, Parkinson's is a movement disorder, individuals who would have difficulty initiating and functioning. This group, however, was pretty high level functioning in terms of their scoring, in terms of a debility scale for that particular diagnosis. And the study was looking at exactly what are the barriers to exercise. And they narrowed it down through statistical analysis, 3 significant barriers. You hit on one of them right there, no time. I don't have time to exercise. And what we're going to talk about today, there is a way to gain value in exercise through interval training, through segmental training, and we can still gain some of the values without having to devote huge amounts of time to do that. So lack of time was one. Another significant barrier in the study they discovered was that it's not going to work. That was the perception. That, oh, this isn't going to help me. It's not going to do anything for me. Why do I have to do this? It's not really engaging. So there was a disconnect as to the value, the efficacy of what they were doing in their mindset. So it's not going to work. I don't have time. And one of the key things was fear of falling. There was a fear of injury in this population. So they were concerned that there could be some adverse effects from the exercise. So we want to look at some of those barriers. So I don't have time is certainly a big one. And so when we look at an exercise prescription, the vast majority of us are starving ourselves of adequate activity. Less than 5% of adults do less than 30 minutes of physical activity daily, according to the President's Council on Fitness, Sports, and Nutrition. Less than 5%. Now, what is a minimal dose of exercise? We probably are looking at 30 minutes most days of the week. So let's say 30 minutes, 4 days a week would be a nice dosage of activity. Now, that's not 30 consecutive minutes. Often with my patients in physical therapy, I will try to say, let's start on giving me three-minute bouts of activity, and maybe progress to 3 4-minute bouts with the ultimate goal of 3 10s a day. That would be a significant, adequate amount of activity to try to get to what would be considered activity. I think we're chronically underdosing. As a therapist, I feel like underdose my patients historically, but underdosing our patients and getting the adequate amount of activity, and even for ourselves. So we need to be able to find, what is the advice and what can we do? We need to find some these time slots. We need to make the time to do it. We all have the same amount of time, but we have to find the motivation to find a small amount of time. So we don't have to get to the gym. We could just be adding a walking routine within our breaks or lunchtime during our normal routines. Exercise while watching television. One thing, just during the commercial times, there's some very simple, maybe some plank exercise or some standing activities, some balance activities that you can incorporate small bouts throughout a normal routine. That's what we want to find, is kind of integrate some of the exercise activities within your normal cycle, because that's going to increase compliance and adherence to your exercise program. Also, exercise first thing in the morning. I say, I'm a runner. I run marathons. I enjoy that. But I know if I don't get my run in the morning, the likelihood of getting that in as the day progresses, I think, goes down. I want to get up early and get my run in before my mind knows what I'm doing, right? I want to get out and get it done. And so really find the time to get up and get it done. And then that does give you a great sense of satisfaction. Hey, it's in the bank, I got it done, and I don't need to worry about it for the rest of the day. So that's very encouraging. Another barrier to exercise, I don't like doing it alone, right? It would be very difficult to be isolated, perhaps, or the social influence. So some advice for that is we need to find someone with similar motivations, some similar goals. As a runner, I have a group of running friends that we have similar objectives and what we would like to do, races maybe we're going to train for, and that is very helpful. So we need to make sure that we're connecting with a group with similar interests and ideas in order to try to establish ultimate goals. For my patients, often they may not be marathoners per se or looking at that type of exercise, but I try to tie in my activities and exercise with what they would want to do. If they want to get out and work in the yard and do their gardening or hunting and those type of things, then what type of task, what type of muscle control, strength development will they need to be able to do that safely? And we want to try to engage in some of those tasks to make it meaningful for them. Often if I try to prescribe some activities that they don't see the connectiveness between what they really want to accomplish, adherence is going to go down considerably. So we need to pair that with what their particular motivations are. And also, having someone to help you is certainly going to be motivating. People who were 5 times more likely to exercise if their spouse was involved with that exercise. If you can kind of have a commitment to that with someone else, your adherence will go up. Knowing that someone else is kind of depending on you can be very significant. They did an interesting down in Lancaster about a year or so ago, they were talking about this, is imagine these little stuffed animals, like a little Furby type device. It's a stuffed animal, but there are 2 devices. One is given to an individual, and the other is given to, let's say, the granddaughter or the grandson. Well, what is done with this device is
programmed as to certain behaviors that are encouraged, like do your exercise or take your medicine, be careful, whatever it may be. So Grammy has one of them. And she has to perform, and she has to identify that these things were done. If she doesn't do it, the granddaughter's Furby gets it. He starts to decay. He starts to decline. There's a connection between these. And so imagine that Grammy gets a call from the granddaughter. Oh, Grammy, you know, my stuffed animal is dying. You need to take your medicine. You need to do your exercise. Of course, that would be motivating. That would help encourage. So having someone involved with your plan is going to be so important to build adherence and help with your motivation. So joining group, crank up the tunes, you know, certainly get the music, I think is motivating to get your mind off the miles, so to speak, of what you're doing can be helpful as well. I enjoy using this app. It's called Strava. Certainly a lot of apps out there. And it's just a running app, and a lot of my friends are on this, so they can see, oh, Tim did this run today, and I can calculates my distance, my time, calories burned, elevation, average mile pace, and so my friends can see that, and then I can see theirs. So if I'm sitting on the couch and I see my friend Steve just had a great 6-mile run, I may be, oh, I better get up and get going, because again, I'm kind of connected. I don't want to get behind. So it's just another opportunity to use technology, again, to help you to improve with some of your motivations. Another barrier was brought up, a lack of energy, lack of motivation. And so we need to kind of move away from that, to stop saying, I wish, start saying, I will. Okay, we need to start making that connection.
I have a sign hanging in front of your greenhouse.
Oh, very good. Exactly. You have to make that determination.
I need to put it on the other side of the wall so I can read it too.
Right. Right, yeah, exactly. You have that, your patients in cardiac rehab, or you're going to tell them, hey, they have some desires, what they want to accomplish, but now they have to get it done. They have to start moving towards that. And one thing that we'll find is that lack of energy, as we start moving, start being engaged with activity, guess what? Energy levels will improve. That's the whole connective thing. One thing, if you want to get older, we're all getting older. Now, if you wanted to get older faster than you already are, what do you think you should do? You could do something to accelerate your aging. What? Nothing! Exactly. Do nothing. Inactivity physiologically has the same characteristics as the aging process towards the body. You're going to see the same type of decline in terms of cardiopulmonary response, musculoskeletal function, just by being inactive, the same characteristics that we see through the natural aging process. I asked that question once, what should you do if you want to get older faster than you already are? And one person said, have children. Right? That will accelerate your aging, right, quickly. So what do we want to do? Remember, as I said, physical activity will increase energy level. That is actually going to make you feel better. I mean, we can see enkephalins, the endorphins going. It really does help you start slow. You don't have to start running marathons. You start running for a minute or two and more of a walking program, and gradually increase that. So start with small distances. Plan ahead. I enjoy what I would like to accomplish in terms of a certain race, what I'm planning for, and then building my calendar as to what type of distances I would have to run in order to be on pace to get to that level of fitness for that particular day. So plan ahead, have a calendar out, and I have my workouts pretty well laid out as to what I need to do to stay on track. And set that motivational goal. Are we looking at running a certain time, losing X amount of pounds, whatever it may be, you probably need to have a target. If we aim at nothing, we'll hit it every time. We have to have something specific in front of us. That's going to be very important. And then also, surround yourself with some people that can really encourage you. That's the one thing I like about Strava. Am I running out? It will say, hey, that was a great run, kudos. I mean, that was really good. It kind of does give you a little bit of encouragement and helps you keep on keeping on. Another barrier that individuals have discussed is, well, I'm too old to exercise, right? I'm too old to get started. It's not going to be very helpful. Well, the reality is that no one is too old to exercise, and physiologically you'll see the same type of benefits as we engage in exercise, even in that older decades than we did in the younger decades. So 30 minutes a day regardless, it can really help, of age, I should say, can really be beneficial to our aging process. Can strength training, sitting in a chair. I mean, again, working with a senior citizen population, I often have to modify exercises based on mobility impairments, if they use adaptive equipment, but I always want to challenge them. Whether I'm working with a 92-year-old, and actually the oldest patient I had was 107, so whether I'm working with someone who's 107 or even a high school athlete, I need to challenge them because the activity has to be somewhat hard so we're getting some connectiveness neurologically and they're gaining some muscle control. So I want to challenge them and I need to figure out where that is. And from a cardiac rehab perspective, you're looking at a lot of hemodynamic response to exercise. There could be abnormal responses you need to be mindful of, but there's a healthy response too, that we have to keep those benchmarks in mind. Exercise prevents falls and may help stave off dementia. Certainly, exercise program has been very valuable in the population I see in reducing fall risk. We're currently working on a program at Hillside Home over across the way here. There are 27 residents there living in assisted living. And over the next 6 months, we're going to be doing a project. We're going to be looking at things that we're measuring are stand-ups, meaning how many times do you stand up in 24 hours?
No.
Now, there is a number. You know what the average is? The average senior in a 24-hour period, how many times would they get up from a chair or from the commode or the bed? The average number is 40 times. So we're going to get a baseline number of what their stand-ups are. We're going to trend it. We're going to encourage it with more. We're going to divide them into teams to have some connectiveness, some encouragement that way, and some motivation to say whose team is winning this week on stand-ups. We're also going to be measuring walking time. How much are you on your feet? How much time? So we're just going to trend those two things over a 6-month period, also looking at their fall percentage over the time, encouraging your traditional exercise participation. But we feel that just building some leg strength, getting out of that chair, just 1 extra, 2 extra throughout the course of the day, through the week, and over the course of time, we can build strength in the quads, and that's going to help reduce some of the changes when it comes to fall risk. So here's a good quote. You don't stop exercising because you grow old. You grow old because you stop exercising. Right? That is what's going to help us. So regardless of where we're at, we need to stay engaged. Our bodies are starving for activity, so we need to feed it. So some of the benefits, okay, benefits of exercise. Well, certainly cardiovascular changes. I mean, when we look at and measure cardiovascular health is VO2 max. Okay, how much can we work that hard over a course of time? And cardiac output. And what we're looking at VO2 max is a product of heart rate, stroke volume. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that. And as we're exercising, our body becomes more effective, more efficient at delivering oxygen to the cells. And so by doing so, it takes less burden on the heart itself. Actually, the perfusion or the oxygenation extraction improves as we're exercising. We're able to deliver more oxygen more effectively. Let's say if you had a lot of work to do, you're a farmer and you had all these fields to tend, you needed people to come help you because there's lots of work. And so they come in on their truck and you're like, everyone off, I need your help. If there's nothing to do, that truck just comes in and like, well, pulls right on out. There's no incentive. And so exercise helps that extraction of oxygen out of those red cells to the tissues to where it can do some good. And so we don't have to rely, because our cardiac output, our stroke volume is going to improve, and so we don't have to rely as heavily upon heart rate to drive cardiac output. So we can see some declines in heart rate. Perceived exertions, we're just going to feel better, right? We're not going to feel as winded, as tired during those times. And certainly it's going to help in reducing blood pressure. In fact, stage 1, stage 2 hypertension can be effectively mitigated with some exercise programming of sufficient intensities. And because that's a way to stave off some of the adverse effects of hypertension, which can lead to heart failure issues because of this taxation that can occur onto the heart. So decreased risk of coronary heart disease as well. So musculoskeletal changes, certainly we have hypertrophy or strengthening of the muscle tissue through the exertion levels, increase that cardiac output for sure, which helps that person keep on keeping on. And the one thing about that is as we age, our cardiac output does diminish naturally. It's declining as we go in healthy aging. But what occurs over time is reaching that VO2 max is going to occur much sooner as we get older. So we're going to become tired more quickly than we had in a recent or past decades. And so by improving this oxygen extraction, we can help improve our ability to sustain things without running out of speed as soon as we typically would. So very good stuff to look at. Neuromuscular changes, increased postural control certainly is helpful. Increased contractile time and gait velocity. These are big things when it comes to exercise. One thing when it comes to neurological issues too, in terms of cognition, they did one study. They looked at the group of laboratory mice, actually. They divided them into 3 groups and they trained them all to do this maze. Now, what they did, the 3 groups were trained to perform this maze. One group was kept in just a basic cage. The second group was in a cage with a running wheel. And the third group was kept in a cage with just some fancy mice toys, whatever a mouse would want. Which group do you think learned the maze the quickest? Which one do you think was able to perform the maze the quickest?
I was sorry.
Either the
The ones with the wheel or the ones with the toys?
So the one with the wheel or the one with the toys? Well, the one with the wheel, actually, the runners learned the maze the quickest. And the one thing that they were looking at after this type of study, the brain chemistry, is that the process of running creates this neuroenzyme called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that was an integral component in the memory process. So these little guys, they were doing their thing, they were able to have that memory of that maze stick a little quicker than their counterparts. So there is some cognitive benefits to that exercise, the mental health changes, certainly decreasing anxiety, depression issues, and certainly memory. So what a great thing to do as we are staying active. Not only are we helping the musculoskeletal components of what we're doing, but we're also having that neurological overlay and mental health benefits as well. Any questions on some of those things?
I'm laughing at the red block.
Oh yeah, no matter how slow you go, you are still lapping everyone on the couch. Yeah, that's right. So you don't want to be discouraged. Like, I can't qualify for Boston, right? I got to cut 20 minutes, but hey, I'm still going to get out and try to do my best. So exactly, there's still going to be some value and benefits to do that. Now, this was, let's see, a regular participation in a study here, Michelle Lusardi out of the University of Connecticut. Regular participation in individualized wellness program, 2 times weekly. So it's not much, 2 times a week here, for a significant amount of time. And that's what we want to look at in terms of developing your programs. 9 to 12 months, protected against functional decline and risk of falls in older adults in assisted living. So that's pretty much what we're looking at here at Hillside Home, trying to bring that fall percentage down just by some activity. and we're not going to be fancy activity, just stand up and walk is what we're going to be directing. So we want to encourage that even with ourselves. What can we do that's attainable, that's realistic, and it's meaningful for us, and that's going to help get to that outcome that we're looking for. Okay, so this is some older statistics, but healthy adults who routinely exercised or walked at least 1 mile without rest had less functional decline than those who did not walk routinely. Those are, now remember, both populations, healthy adults. Okay, this is not like one group of disease-ridden individuals that were not moving. Healthy adults. So we can look at that and say, I'm doing pretty well now, but if I add this additional layer of activity, wow, we can really help ward off against those functional declines that I often encounter in my patient populations later in life, that they're finding themselves unable to perform at certain routines. This was really interesting. Viewing TV unfavorably associated with mortality. Okay? Estimated that compared to persons who watch no television, those that spend a lifetime average of 6 hours a day, now that's a lot of television, I don't know who that guy is, watching, can expect to live 4.8 years less.
Oh my.
Okay? That's probably double if it's Jerry Springer or something like that. That probably would facilitate more. But on average, then, every single hour of TV viewed after age 25, life expectancy by 21.8 minutes. Right? So inactivity, so we need to get up and get moving, because that's certainly not healthy for us for long periods of time. Now, also, as we get older, just staying active, we're going to ward off some of these more significant issues. Hip fractures, the population could be cut nearly in half with physical activity throughout life. A lot of things that we deal with, some of these serious orthopedic conditions or rehabilitation programs, wow, if we could just integrate some normal routines throughout those earlier decades, we could really save ourselves in our health system in the long run just by keeping that active engagement. Okay, so beliefs. Let's talk about exercise. What does it take? What should we believe? What should we hold to when establishing and starting this exercise program? Well, there are some core components that every exercise program, if you want to engage in, you need to incorporate into your particular plan. You should have a warm-up and cool-down phase, which is important. We want to make sure that we're initiating, getting the body ready to take part in that exercise, and it certainly can involve some general mobility, some specific stretching. Certainly it helps improve circulation, and also the cool-down component's critical as well, because that helps flush out some of the metabolites that can cause some delayed onset soreness following the activity. And I noticed that specifically, personally, in my running. I have a really long run, and I know specifically with a distance that I want to complete, I might figure out when I'm going to hit that distance and still have maybe a half mile before I'm home. So I can just stop and just walk, and that's my cool down, right? I'm done, and first it's just running all the way till I'm home. Now I'm done. I've noticed that tends to reduce the amount of soreness I experience just by having that amount of time to clear that out. We also want to be looking at overload. So tissues need to be challenged and they will respond to it. So the exercise has to be dosed at adequate intensities in order to create the desired effect. We also want to look at specificity. What do you want to accomplish, right? Training is task specific. Do you want to be as a runner? Do you want to be, you should be involved in some running. Are you a biker? Do you want to be more muscle performance, weightlifting? We really want to look at the exercise and specify according to your desires. And progression. What will happen is initially we will make some progress, but if we don't dynamically change that exercise program, we're going to plateau. So we need to be dynamic and looking at changes that are necessary in order to continue the improvements. And also recuperation. If there's times of if we continue to tax injuries without, and so we need to make sure that we are building adequate times of recuperation into our exercise programming, and then certainly the recovery times. All right, so the benefits that we are looking at: warm-up, cool-down, 5 to 10 minutes, certainly nothing overwhelming, just some gentle stretching. I actually think it's important. The cool-down phase is to do some stretching as well. That's probably even more significant in my experience than the initial warm-up phase. But 5 to 10 minutes, gross mobility, gentle stretching, and that is certainly going to help reduce your risk of any musculoskeletal issues as you start your exercise program. As we said, the cool-down component does help remove some of the issues, the lactic acid and the things that can be associated with muscle soreness over time. So cool-down is going to be an important part. We don't want to overly tax the system and then completely stop. That can cause some soreness, and that can lead to discouragement, right? You might be thinking, oh, I don't want to do that again, or I'm not going to take part in this particular exercise program. So as I said, the tissues must be stretched and challenged, this overload effect. Very important that we look at our exercise and dose it appropriately. What does it take? A very simple thing that I'll do with my patients is if I give them an activity to do, like let's lift this weight, I'll ask them after 1 or 2 repetitions, was that fairly light, somewhat hard, or hard? And when I'm asking them to tell me after 1 or 2 reps, if they say, well, that was fairly light, Tim, what do you think I'll do? I'll increase the resistance, because if it's fairly light, then I'm not getting adequate overload. What I'm looking for, generally speaking, is somewhat hard after 1 or 2 repetitions. At that point, I'm probably going to say, okay, once I've established that resistance, let's say 12 to 15 repetitions, 1 set. What that will probably do, if I've started sufficiently at somewhat hard, that will probably take them to fatigue. And that's what I'm looking for. I want to tax the tissue, I want to overload it, and then we're going to recuperate, we're going to rest, we're going to do something else. But we need to make sure we're overloading specifically. If you can sit there and do the same resistance for 30, 40 reps, it's way too light, and we're not getting the adequate response. So we want to look at overload from a variety of angles. We can look at intensity, which in my example, I might go from a 5-pound dumbbell to an 8-pound dumbbell, certainly. It could be duration. Maybe we are looking at going at 3 miles. Now I'm going to do 5 miles or 6 miles. I'm going to increase the duration to get an overload effect. Frequency, maybe you're exercising twice a week. Maybe you'll bump it to 3 times a week. Certainly, and then velocity, you could see in terms of how fast you are working the exercise, if you're doing some intervals or speed training, for example. You would not want to overload multiple applications here at once. You would want to pick something that you're trying to establish as an overload increase, whether it's in any of those domains, but I wouldn't do all of those domains. Certainly that would not be wise. But try to figure out which are you going to be looking at. Maybe I'm going to slow down my speed, but I'm going to increase the duration. Maybe I'm going to add an additional run, but it's not going to certainly be as fast as some of my others. So make sure when you're for the beliefs of an exercise program that's going to be effective is you have to look at all of these things at some point in the program, because you want to keep progression going. You wouldn't want to keep it stagnant. You want to see what can be done to continue the challenge the tissues. So specificity, we want to be looking at, again, the objectives. Are we looking at muscle performance? Are we looking at aerobic capacity or endurance issues? Are we looking for dynamic balance? These could be considered things that we would want to address. So what is the intent? And then we need to challenge that particular element. So we're looking at, for example, exercise. I shared about the stand-ups. When we're looking at that program, often my patients I'll ask them to keep track. How many times do you stand up in 24 hours? And they might tell me, well, 7 or 8. So profoundly anemic. So we want to see where their baseline is. But think about that. Lifting the weight of your body against gravity out of a chair is a significant exercise and is highly taxing. And the majority of individuals over 80 years of age can't do it without pushing with their hands. Try to stand up without your hands. And really, that is one challenge, one test that we'll look at. So we want to look at specificity. What is necessary? What is necessary for whether it's your particular goal, if it's for my patient, just to be able to navigate in their home safely. What is necessary for them? And I'm going to train towards that. And then progression. As I said, we need to make sure that we're moving forward with an appropriate amount of exercise dosing. One thing here Dr. Gary Gray talks about, one must prescribe an optimal dose of exercise as soon as possible, right? We want to get to the optimal dose, and then we also we want to create that environment, as he says, for optimal healing, which is good. Above all else, do no harm with our exercise, and then be as aggressive as you can be without breaking rule number 2 about doing no harm, right? We want to be as aggressive as possible without doing any harm. We want to continue to challenge our patients and move them forward. And also ourselves, we need to make sure that we are getting adequate dose. All right, so recuperation and recovery, we cannot rush, we cannot progress this. It just takes time, so we don't want to be over ambitious or zealous in doing our activities and then quickly fade off. Especially, this is kind of an appropriate time of the year to be talking exercise, right? In January, we make these New Year's resolutions. We should resolve that this is a long process, and that should be something that we are going to integrate into our daily routines, our monthly routines, because that definitely can lead to some concerns. Any questions there on that one? Okay. All right, so one of my favorite quotes here. We talk about, this is John Adams, our second president back in the day. Dwayne, you remember John Adams?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So John said to his son Charles, Charles was a student at Harvard. He was, had some issues. He was not very active. John was an avid walker. And he wrote this letter to his son Charles, and this was a great line. He says, "Move or die. That is the language of our Maker in the constitution of our bodies." You know, he was trying to encourage his son, right? Get going. You're not made in the shape of a square, right? You're made with appendages, feet, and legs, and so it's very important to get out there and get going. So, any questions then? All right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. That was excellent. Let me look real quick here. We have some upcoming topics on February the 8th. Stress management, Kathy Berkey, Larry Dixon, and that makes it a little bigger. I forgot my glasses. Ashley McWilliams. Whoops, don't do that. On March the 8th is a battlefield study talking about history, Civil War battlefield, that sort of thing. So that's Glenn Thompson, local attorney, is going to give us that topic. April 12th, the Master Gardeners are back for seed starting for the spring. So thanks for coming out today, and Tim, thanks, nice job.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Welcome.
We'll talk to you next time.
That's good.